This is Remember the Great Sports. What I am going to do was, originally I set out to record this video to show you my card show pickups, but as I got into the video it started getting a little bit longer than what I thought it should be, so I'm going to actually break this video up into 3 separate videos and post them hopefully in chronological order so you can view them in order as they come out, but I might post one day, one the next day, one the next day. So this is just a brief introduction of card shows, and the first video is going to be me talking about local card shows in the Missouri, Kentucky, and Indiana state areas. I happen to know the show promoter, so I kind of do like a 9-10 minute plug on just his card shows and talking about card shows in general. So if you actually want to see the pickups, fast forward to the next video, video 2 or video 3, and that will get you what you'd like to see. So just hang in there with me. Like I said, I can get long-winded sometimes, so I hope you enjoy the 3 videos and leave me your comments down at the bottom. Thanks. I just want to start out by giving a good plug to a very good friend of mine. He's a card show promoter. I've known this individual for many years. He is a retired educator. He also is a retired baseball coach. He coached at the high school level and maybe the collegiate. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, Ron. But he now goes around throughout the Midwest, and I just want to, every time I see this individual, I thank him for putting on the card show in my area, because that's like the only person that does card shows in this area. I mean, I have to drive hours sometimes to Kansas City, St. Louis, wherever, just to go to a card show, and that's sometimes not economically feasible, especially when you're on a fixed income. You know, to convince your wife you have to drive 4 hours to just go look at baseball cards. Not a real good scenario. So my best way of getting around that is this. Mr. Estes promotes card shows at shopping malls. So very commonly I'm able to convince my wife, hey, you know, if we go to the mall, you can go shopping and I can just run around the mall and buy baseball cards. And usually my wife is pretty on board with that. So with that being explained a little bit, I just want to share with you some of the locations that Coach Estes is going to have some future shows. Some of these are in the past already. This is the most recent calendar, so it looks like actually this weekend there's going to be a show in Evansville. But as you can see, I don't know how easy this is to read, so I apologize if it gets blurry. But just in February alone, he's having 3 card shows. Make that 4 card shows. You know, and they're in not close to proximity locations. He's in Springfield, St. Louis, Evansville, and Independence. Then March 3rd, he's in Columbia. He also has some shows going on, it looks like, in Paducah, although it does say tentative down here at the bottom, so that may not be a for sure thing. Also in March, looks like there's a tentative one. So this is his show schedule. Just to run it down: Columbia, Paducah, Evansville, Indiana, St. Louis, Missouri, Paducah, Kentucky, Columbia, Missouri, Independence, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri. And on the back here are some future dates. He's got a little blurb about how to contact him and, you know, if you want to be a vendor, that type of thing. But Paducah, St. Louis, Columbia, Independence, Columbia, all the way through the end of December of this year. So Coach Estes is on Beckett. If you go to the Beckett show calendar, I'll put the link down at the bottom on how to get to the Beckett show calendar. If you simply search by state, odds are Mr. Estes will come up in a Missouri, Kentucky, or Indiana search if you do any of those 3 states. So I know in the past he's done a show or 2 in Illinois, so that's why a few minutes ago I said he does shows in 4 different places, but it doesn't look like he has any slated for Illinois this year. So one last plug before we get to work. With that being said, he's having a 3-day show coming up in April, and he's doing this in conjunction with a couple other show promoters from what I understand, and that is April 20th to 22nd coming up at Machinist Hall over in Bridgeton. If you're not familiar with Bridgeton, it's a suburb more or less of St. Louis, so you're going to St. Louis if you want to go to this show more or less. It's about roughly 10 minutes from the airport, give or take, depending on the traffic, I guess. But some of the things, you know, to point out is, you know, there is an admission fee on Friday and Saturday, where obviously his mall shows don't have admission prices typically. He is going to have Beckett on site. There's some contact info at the bottom there, and I'll post that at the bottom. But also, on the back of this flyer, he also has his Kansas City, or Independence, Missouri, which is where the Royals play. He also has his show scheduled for that, and there's one coming up at the end of February. He's got one in June, he's got one in September, and he's got one in November. So if any of my viewers out there are basically in the tri-state or even the, I would say a 5-state radius, I mean Arkansas, Iowa, you know, places like that, you know, I highly recommend coming to Coach Estes' shows. Like I said, I've known him for years. His son actually is a former minor league player. He's around my age, so that's why we kind of related. His son and I are about the same age. And I've been autographing long enough that I actually saw his son pitch when he was coming up with the Peoria Chiefs. So that's how me and Ron kind of connected way back when, is we knew all the ins and outs of some of the Cardinal players in the organization, and I believe his son was teammates with the likes of Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina, you know, some of the great Cardinals that have come through the Cardinals in the last recent years. I just want to give a good plug for show promoter Coach Ron Estes. Again, I will put his contact information down at the bottom, but one of the things that Ron has asked me to do is possibly come in person and shoot video live. Not necessarily live, but not a live podcast or anything like that, but to go shoot some video at the mall itself and post on YouTube, so you can get an idea of what kind of vendors are at these shows, what kind of memorabilia. You know, it's just not baseball cards. You know, there's a guy that specializes in pennants, for example. You know, there's other people that bring supplies, you know, anything you can think of, you know, supply wise. There's a vendor that does that. You know, there's individuals that specialize in the high-end stuff. You know, Ron in particular, he's more vintage, and that's why me and him get along so well, because a lot of the through-the-mail autograph videos that I shoot, those cards come from Ron himself, and he gives me a heck of a deal on them. You know, we're talking like 50 cents or less on the cards, and when you're talking 1950s, 60s commons, 50 cents a card, that's pretty hard to pass up. So I've known Ron for probably over a decade easily, and you know, the reason we met is because he promotes these shows, and there have been so many videos out there talking about the community, you know, how we're a close-knit community, and you know how, you know, the YouTube community is one community, but there's also, you know, some of you may be aware of this, but there is a close-knit community among card show promoters and the people that have come to their shows over the years. I mean, I've been going to shows since I was a college kid. I mean, I'm a full-grown adult now. So, you know, I thank Ron every time I see him from doing that. He's gotten to know me and my wife quite well, because my wife is usually sitting in a chair waiting for me to leave because I'm you know, visiting so much and buying cards from him. So we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty here. I'm going to show you some of the things that I purchased. I have a few things that I'm really, really excited for.